Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, wherever in the world you may be joining us from today. My name is Francesco Del Carpio, and I am the CFAL York Operations Coordinator. I would like to officially open the second session of the Drones for Public Health, Safety, Risk, Humanitarian, and Emergency Management Speaker Series, presented in partnership with York University's Advanced Disaster and Emergency Rapid Response Lab and the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology's Center for Innovation and Research in Unmanned Systems. I would like to begin today's session with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge and recognize that many Indigenous nations have longstanding relationships with the territory upon which our campuses are located that precede the establishment of York University. The area is known as Takaranto and has been caretaken by the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Huron-Wendat. It is now home to many First Nation, Inuit, and Métis communities. We acknowledge the current treaty holders, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and that the territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. As this is an online event, our participants may be joining from various locations, so I strongly encourage you to learn about the traditional land upon which you are located. With this, I welcome our moderator, our speaker, and our participants from around the world. Welcome to our webinar. It is now my great pleasure to introduce today's moderator, Michelle Arif. Michelle is a research staff and geospatial analyst at the Center of Innovation and Research in Unmanned Systems, or CIRIS, at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology. She holds a master's degree in disaster and emergency management from Royal Roads University, as well as an applied bachelor's in geographic information systems from STATE and an undergraduate degree from the University of Toronto. Her research interests focus on how climate change influences disaster patterns and how emerging technologies, such as drones, can aid in disaster mitigation efforts. Additionally, Michelle actively volunteers with the Canadian Red Cross, contributing to the emergency response team and personal disaster assistance programs. Michelle, thank you very much for moderating today's session and for your help putting together the series. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Francesco, for that kind introduction, and thank you to everyone for joining us here today. It's great to see some familiar faces and names from the first session. Before we begin, I'd like to note that the chat box below is open for communal dialogue. You can start by sharing where you're joining us from today. We also have a Q&A box, so you can pop questions in there. They'll only be seen by the panelists, so feel free to ask any questions as they come up. I'll make sure we address all questions at the end of our talk. One of the goals for today's webinar is to explore the role of drones and RPAS in public health, risk and emergency management, public safety, and humanitarian response, while also raising awareness among First Nation communities about the applications and benefits. Now, I'm honored to introduce our speaker for this session, Council Member Cliffton Cross of Frog Lake First Nation. Clifton is a proud lifelong member of Frog Lake, serving his third term on the council. With over 20 years of experience working with youth and leadership in portfolios such as education, family services, and economic development, Clifton has been a driving force behind transformative community initiatives. He's played a vital role in advancing industry partnerships and innovative projects, including green energy, hydrogen production, and carbon sequestration. His leadership exemplifies how technology and collaboration can empower communities. Without wasting too much time, I know we've got a lot to cover. Clifton, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Michelle. And thanks you for Francesco for the introduction of our moderator. And it's such a great thing to hear your background, Michelle. Keep up the great work. My name is Clifton Cross. I'm Clifton Cross Igusigason. I'm from Frog Lake First Nations. I'd like to thank Creator today for the time given, the opportunities presented. I thank him for the sun in the sky, the ground beneath my feet, the air in my lungs, the water that retains all life and living things, and the ether that connects us to each other and to Creator itself. With that, everyone, I'm pleased to be a voice for the First Nation leadership in not only our traditional territory here in Treaty 6, but I think a voice for the nations of Turtle Island in a global atmosphere that is asking for our voices to be heard and asking for us to get up and speak. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background from myself before I begin, and that's to explain some context in where I'm coming from. As Michelle mentioned, I have the background of youth and recreation under my belt. working inside employment and training services since 2000. And that's where my story really began, opening up the opportunity for the youth to organize themselves. At our strongest point, there was 216 youth between the ages of 13 and 28 aligned. And when we went after major projects such as 2 playgrounds, 4 baseball diamonds, a hockey arena, a field house, a recording studio, a radio station, and then a fitness center within the 10 years from 2009 to 2019, in which 2019 I entered as an elected official for my nation. And we continued the great work with the youth who are now young adults and servicing their children with additional opportunities within a travel center, a emergency management center, a high school, and a library. Then the pandemic hit, and that's where our chief asked the pointed question: how do we service our population if the municipalities and the cities close their doors to us? So I took that question home with me to my toilet seat, where all great ideas come from, and developed 14 steps on how to get my community to just that, a sustainable, sovereign ability to operate under green initiatives, making the transition from oil and gas into the green economy, and also take advantage of our role needed to explore other opportunities, diversifying our way ahead. And with that, that began our conversation that I'm about to enter into. So I'm going to start sharing my screen, everyone, and I hope you can all see this. I'm going to also put down the cameras to the side here so I'm not distracted. So connecting Frog Lake First Nations, my home that I lived for my entire life, born, raised, graduated, raised a family of my own here in Frog Lake First Nations. Frog Lake is a Treaty 6 signatory. We have been inside of the industry of oil and gas legacy energy ventures for 45 plus years. We are a member of the Confederacy of Treaty 6, which is a 17 First Nation member organization within Northeast Alberta and Saskatchewan, Manitoba. We are also a member of a 6-member organization, Tribal Chiefs Ventures. We're semi-isolated, but we are actually located directly between 2 major cities here in Alberta, the city of Lloydminster and the city of Coal Lake. As I mentioned, I was elected for 3 terms, 2019, 2021, 2023, the last term being an expansion. The first 2 were INAC-run 2-year terms, which are very hard to operate under. This 3rd term is actually an expanded custom election code that we've developed and were ratified by referendum for expansion to 4 years, which allows us to actually complete major projects, which we've taken initiative to do so. I've done a lot of green energy and sustainability projects with a team I called, and again, from that toilet seat experience, we named that venture Legacy Energy and Alternative Power. And what I do is coordinate all of the expertise, the polytechnic institutes, the university institutes, our industry partners, our engineering partners, our law firms, and coordinate efforts to apply for funding to get the preliminary work and the feasibility work done prior to large-scale projects to make sure that they're viable and sustainable within our communities. So I tell the story. I develop the relationships with my team. We make sure we have a clean and sustainable vision, and our conclusion is ongoing. It's non-linear, and it is inviting people that share our same values and goals to the table. Every week we meet at 8:30 Thursdays. So I had a very valuable update with my components, my colleagues and friends this morning before entering this. So I bid you all a great day, and I hope I make you proud with this presentation and all the great work we do. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, our story began with the creation of a steering committee that is Legacy Energy and Alternative Power. The very first member of our organization, after being initialized by Frog Lake First Nations, was Turco and Associates. My dear good friend, my brother from another mother, Ben Lee, pictured on the bottom left of the screen, was the first member. And then on the far right of the picture, Jim Gilliland became our second member. We recruited Vivian Manask. Jim Gilliland is from William Engineering. So we have Turco and Associates, Williams Engineering, and then reached out to Vivian Manask, the principal for Reimagined Architects. She became our third member. Fourth, including Frog Lake. And then we reached out to SAIT, letting them know that we had a 14-step plan, a 30-year initiative to actually get all of these initiatives underway. They immediately responded with, how do we help you get there? So we signed a memorandum of understanding for operations within Frog Lake and getting those 14 initiatives as close to finished and complete and benefiting the nations as possible. We invited for a community update recently, hosted a pancake breakfast where SAIT and our partners came and flipped pancakes and served our nation members there in the high school, and delivered a beautiful speech, an inspiring motivational speech by Jamie McGinnis, Director of ARIS, the Applied Research and Innovative Services portion of SAIT. So we applied together, Frog Lake First Nations and SAIT jointly applied to the ARTP, Applied Research and Technology Partnership. And we were successful in attaining the grant, which allowed us to first apply for the first 2 years of research and development for 3 areas. And then we expanded into a 4-year ask because we needed to finish our progress. So the Applied Research and Innovation Services different sectional bodies took care of the 3 items, the components of ARTP1. The first being wildfire resiliency, the second being vertical axis wind turbine feasibility, and then the third being a vanadium redox flow battery. Now, very quickly, I'll explain that these all happen in parallel. The community itself was making sure that it coordinated capacity development inside of our high school and our post-secondary organizations inside the community, as well as making sure that we're letting the organizations and First Nations, Métis, communities and municipalities around us know what we're doing and how we're trying to incorporate curriculum development inside of our high schools to make sure that the career development is happening in a seamless way with education streams. So for the purpose of today, I will focus on the wildfire resiliency mapping that we've done. Frog Lake First Nations, as a First Nation, is mostly boreal forest, and we are susceptible for large wildfires in our area. Since I've been in elected leadership for the last 5 years, we've actually lost 21 homes to wildfires, to grass fires, to arson, to electrical fires. And what we want to do here is to at least provide solutions for making sure that we are resilient when it comes to wildfires, flooding, natural disasters, and identifying how we can utilize our land base around us to make sure that we can protect our infrastructure, protect the homes we live in and the buildings we work in. All of this was worked in conjunction with the development of capacity within Frog Lake First Nations. But before I get there, the flyover passes and the training that was involved went after 3 areas of our entire community. We have a large land base. 2 communities, Pascoawin and Onipauhahus, were merged into one to create the Frog Lake First Nations proper that exists today. So the drone systems went out and accessed our powwow grounds and did several mapping passes, LIDAR passes and ground penetration passes and slope passes to make sure that we have our data sets and creating our own collection of data to manage our new infrastructure goals and what we want to see in our community. It also activated this data set to make sure that our capital projects that I'll talk about in a little bit utilize existing information that were gathered by our own people in conjunction with SAID coming out to our communities to do this great work. Also identifying sensitive cultural and traditional ceremonial practicing grounds in our nation, areas that we need to protect and conserve in our wetlands, our marshes, wrapped around our large water system that is in our community, and protecting the areas that were already disturbed by oil and gas. This opportunity actually created the initiative to launch an entrepreneurial side of things with our drone development on Frog Lake proper. So we called this the Thunderbird Rise Unmanned Systems, or TRUS. Now, TRUS is dependent on further capacity development within the Institute of SAIT and its partners to gather up the capacity to actually feasibly and viably do long-term contracts with our oil and gas operating services, with clean tech, with the carbon monitoring systems that are beginning to develop and take place around us. We want to take a large chunk of those contracts that are available to us to sustain active employment and career opportunities. We are looking at what SAIT's doing inside of the health services market with Stony Dakota, and have actually accessed another grant to do a little bit more work in medical services, which I'll talk about a little bit further in the presentation. But we are looking at all opportunities, researching what we can do with this technology. And it's funny and a little punny, the sky is not the limit when it comes to drones. So we took that a step further and applied it to our Frog Lake Fire and Emergency Services, applying training to members of our community. There's 11 pilots fully certified inside of our emergency services and their community members that are actively helping us gather steam and create the capacity needed to be effectively operating inside of emergency services, humanitarian efforts inside of energy resource management. And this triggered our neighbors and sister nations to join forces with us. Cold Lake First Nations, Kihiwan Cree Nations joined forces with Frog Lake First Nations, and affectionately named themselves KFC, creating a mutual agreement between the three nations, and has really turned heads in the Indian world out here in the northeastern Alberta Lakeland area and the Heartland area. We are now actively formulating plans to utilize drone technologies in our medical services, our emergency services, in our infrastructure planning and land-based management tools. So it is Frog Lake actively trying to lead in the Northeast Alberta section of Canada in drone technology delivery and services. And obviously, Frog Lake First Nations, as I mentioned, was 45 plus years in the oil and gas industry. We have 600 active well sites. Some have been reclaimed over the past 2 years with SRP program with help from Arrowhead Technologies. Here's a shout out to Clayton and Kevin Heck for all the great work they've done to help us reclaim, cut and cap some of the wells that were no longer beneficial to Frog Lake First Nations, and return them directly to the grasslands that they were began before they became assets to the nations. So Frog Lake Energy Resource Corporation actually manages the retail of our oil resource and operates with different service providers and operational companies, junior companies on the nation. But we all work in hand with trying to monitor the changes to the environment this industry has caused over the years, and how to reclaim and manage and effectively use the new technologies available to us to do the process in a cleaner way, so that we are not dealing with ramifications to our environment long term, and we only borrow our land from our youth and our children. Let's make sure that there is a land for them to receive when we're not here. Frog Lake First Nations, it has a lot of great people inside of it, and we activate when it becomes apparent that some of our members are in need of help. It was this day in September of 2023 that we lost a community member, a young fella. I believe he is about 9 years old. He went missing from his home. He is an autistic young man who wanted to explore outside and got away from his mom and dad. Went missing. There was 30 people that went out from our community to go help look for the young boy. Again, we were surrounded by boreal forest. There was lots of work done in the 30s in Frog Lake First Nations to create underground food storages, and then they were abandoned, and a lot of them were unmarked. So we had a lot of justification for being very worried about the safety of this young fella. It took 3 days. It took 12 nations sending out their people to help and assist. We had several people out looking for him. And the one thing that found this young fella, Jagger Cross Memnook, was our pilots actively using drones to find this missing child. And this blurb on the screen is basically us extending our thanks to the members of all these nations that came to our aid to find one child, really bringing home the nations and our inherent behaviors and our way of life on how to activate an entire community, several communities for one child. And this technology was proven that day on the return home of this young boy. It's important to realize that everything we do is in service of the people we justly wake up every morning to provide the tools to make sure that their lives are a little bit better and that quality of life is lifted. The returning home of this young man affected everyone at the start of a school year, and it showed every student inside of our school system that community that communities can come together, just one child. I'm sorry, I got a little emotional on that one. This inspired us to work with SAIT yet again to bring in that feeling that we all felt with the technology proving itself a value to the benefit of the lifestyles and the quality of life of First Nations people, children and youth living in the community. We wanted to exemplify and highlight those benefits with our children inside of their high school setting. So what we did was we reached out to Prairie Scan to activate an ask for funding. Sadly, it didn't work out in time because we wanted to rush into the school system. And then we found an operational partner in TC Energy to actually operate the finances needed to deliver this. And what we did was we did what we said we've always wanted to do. We've taken the two-eyed seeing approach of Indigenous learnings and traditional teachings and paired it with a golden age of green technology. And all of the experts within our Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, alongside of our elders, we lifted pipe and asked for our ancestors to join us in the servicing of the delivery of these new technologies in the capacity building of our youth inside of their classrooms. In a good way, we ask Creator and our ancestors to join us in this venture. Very proud of this picture. As we are losing our elders, we still have a lot of them sharing their knowledge with our children and youth. We delivered what I think is a greatly needed access point to at least hold in your hands the remote controls to be able to reach out and touch the drones that are actively being used for research and development purposes and for several career opportunities worldwide, globally. It has been a joy working alongside Wade Hodkins and the team over at Cirrus. It is an honor and privilege to be delivering the opportunities to put the drone controller in the hands of youth that are already taking part in training methodologies through their Xbox and PlayStation systems. They were already doing that training. We just have to give them the opportunity to use those skills in a career that can maintain and provide for their families and that kitchen table in the years to come. This is an all points bulletin methodology that we implore other nations, other communities, other walks of life to engage in. The ability for parents to give up their children inside of the walls of those schools is just that. We give it up our opportunities to make sure that they're safe and learning what they need to operate in this day and age. It is our time to actually activate all we intend to do inside of the business systems, inside of the environmental monitoring systems within the classrooms. Every age division deserves that opportunity to see what the future holds for them. Inside of our community, we are dealing with a lot of, and I think every community in Canada and I think in the globe is actually dealing with another pandemic in terms of drug trafficking, in terms of addictions on First Nations, in terms of high-speed chases, in terms of all of these dangerous goods operating throughout our First Nation lands and not being maintained, not being monitored. We reached out to Alberta Innovates through a micro voucher, and it was funded for an AI pilot application of cameras. These cameras create security and surveillance for my members in Frog Lake, and it is a beginning of data collection, management, and sovereignty that Frog Lake First Nations has undertaken with all of its capital projects, energy projects, sustainable development services, and supply chain ambitions. It is necessary to embrace data management, data centers, AI, and ML. If you want to make sure that you're addressing all the needs of our community members, all the land steward opportunities and career opportunities, we need to manage our data full scale. And this is the beginning. Inside of our community, we, again, depend on our youth. And I am, as a leader, doing a disservice if I'm not developing the people younger than me to fill my shoes when I'm no longer able to do the service to my community or my members. So I am proud to acknowledge the work of those three individuals on the top left screen, starting with Michael Marty Jr., the fellow in the LA hat on the left, on the right side. He is our community energy manager. The fellow in the middle is Samuel Marty. He is our community energy coordinator. And directly left is Aiden Abraham, our community energy youth coordinator. These three young gentlemen spearhead and manage large projects in terms of green energy, operational services, environmental monitoring, and towards net zero initiatives inside of our community, and are doing us all proud. They are actively working with the Indigenous Clean Energy Network inside of the different organizational structures, the Bring It Home program, the Next Gen program, the 7 Gen program, and so much more. These young gentlemen are taking it upon themselves to not only deliver the feasibility to create a solar farm on the community, but utilizing the existing technologies that we were working with our other projects to utilize the drone technologies to further map out our community and develop infrastructure that will service our community in all of its needs. What I introduce here is two sectional parallel projects that they are working on. One to deliver energy opportunities to an entire nation, utilizing its existing infrastructure, the roads, the walking paths that can be parallel to those roads can provide opportunity for First Nations if they apply solar panels to the street lights that are up along that walking path. wind turbines, vertical axis wind turbines in the shape of trees. They're called wind trees. If you combine those two things with a walking path that delivers electrical services, gas services, fiber optic services to each and every community member's homes and the facilities that we work in, then you're actively creating a virtual power plant that could effectively take away the the dependence of retail price gougers right now inside of the unregulated energy market in Alberta. We are all suffering from those type of gouging with our utility bills each and every month, and some of us are not doing well. This creates the opportunity for Frog Lake First Nations to initiate its own utility on the nation, to decentralize and develop a cooperative where all our members can intergenerationally benefit from it. The next portion of it is the Frog Lake First Nations Legacy Stones Trail project. In some of our capital builds, we have erected a lot of large boulders, rocks that would be incorporated into Talatale. Frog Lake is one of the bands that was declared a rebel band. In the 1885 Northwest Rebellion, we were paired up with all of the other First Nations that were called rebel bands, and unfairly not given the chance to tell their perspective. This Legacy Stone Trail, which is upon the Greenway project, would do just that, deliver our perspective to our history. And through drone technologies, we can actually map out and develop how to do a historical representation, an interpretation of what we've been through. Drone technologies have, for the first time, allowed for us to identify where our fallen youth and children have gone once they entered into the residential system. In 2019, 2020, we started to hear rumblings of unmarked graves and the initial 215. I was an active participant on the board of the Blue Quills University initiative to do ground penetrating radar work to find our missing students at that university when it was a residential school. We have more work to do, utilizing those ground penetrating radars capabilities. We can access our history and see what really happened that is buried beneath our soil at the grounds of the Frog Lake Massacre. With our two-eyed seeing approach alongside the golden age of technology, we want to make sure that if we're using the technology of the sky in the realm of the T-birds, in the realm of the thunderbirds and the winged, we must reinvent a future in balance with nature. And you're seeing these new technologies. You're even seeing quantum physics justify what our ancient knowledge was already saying. If you make references to filling the skies with technology, are you not replicating the activities of a bird? If you are not actively utilizing what God has put in front of you as the creation, as you build your own creations, then you are doing a disservice to nature and your own creative activities. So we're seeing it. We're seeing the evolution of a technology base returning to the examples led by nature. This is where Frog Lake and the First Nation partners can really sink their teeth in, because we have an understanding that Creator set forth the direction. We all have paths that lead astray, but we all return to that guided structure. Much like Alice in Wonderland and the little figurine that just flipped across the screen there is no limits to our imaginations. Once you can picture that ability to do just that inside your head, whatever it is, you can hold that in your hands, and you have the ability to actually pass it on to the generation that is behind you. Utilizing this information, we can take steps inside of agriculture to utilize drones to actually deliver seed developments for our hemp on the nation, for our canola, for our crops that we feed to our buffalo here in the nation. We can take the existing technology and plant trees by the thousands in our land bases. We can work with our First Nation partners, and we are working with 14 to reach a goal of 100,000 acres of hemp grown on Indigenous land to work and build systems within the hemp industry that'll help deliver long-term goals, delivering houses that'll use materials that have no black mold, no ability for black mold to form in our nation. We have 160 homes that we're trying to fix from this problem of black mold. Hemp can be applied as the green buffalo in since time immemorial. First Nations in general have utilized the animal to deliver every part of it to the benefit of the individual. And for our people, it supplied clothing, shelter, and food. Now this hemp plant can actually do the exact same thing. And Frog Lake is taking the strides to do just that in textile, in building materials, and in food. I want to mention one thing too on the side there. If you see that umbrella and that delivery mechanism there, straight out of the Hunger Games. Utilizing this technology, we are actively researching how to deliver diabetic bubble packs to our elders who have a rough time and reach out to their leadership just for gas to get to the nearest town. Now we can actually utilize our delivery mechanisms. Our pilots can now go to L Point or from our community, deliver the bubble packs to those elders in need and those members that suffer from chronic illness, from addiction, from chronic disease. We now have the opportunities to not take the road, but the sky. So here's what I ask. My job is to inspire, is to advocate, is to speak on behalf of my children, my youth, my elders, my men and women. I believe that there's a foundation that needs to be established. We have several decades under our belt with the use of unmanned drones, unmanned vehicles. Now let's take it to the next level so that we create that foundation that enables a skyline to be built above. We do this by organizing drone races, something that is fun, something that can take the career and really establish itself. Setting up obstacle courses for our youth to gain skills and just have fun with the career, the management. Time trials, aerial display challenges. You're seeing what's happening in China and Japan. Why not take it that step further? Smaller scale, of course, but our youth should be provided that opportunity to employ any and all methodologies within this career management, this hobby, and recruit and retain young pilots. With that, everyone, I do not want to forget to say the future is always forward, and let's not limit ourselves. There are no boundaries in the sky. Hi, hi.
Great. Thank you so much for your talk, Cliffton. You shared a lot for us to think about and a lot to ponder on. And there's so many different things that I didn't know that Frog Lake First Nation was working on. So it's really nice to see that. As a reminder, the Q&A box is open, but I can start the conversation off by saying thank you again. You spoke a lot about the different technologies that have been adapted by your nation. Can you talk a little bit about any roadblocks that may have come up with adapting new technology? Was it a smooth transition when you were speaking to other, like the KFC nations? How did you go about doing that?
Step by step. I think if you fire hose the situation and like I just did with everyone here, then it's a harder conversation to have. I think piecemealing it, and again, going back to the analogy of the buffalo, I think it's an actual elephant analogy. How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? That's how we kind of approach that um, aspect of talking about these new and exciting ways of doing things. With KFC in particular, uh, they see what we're trying to do. They encourage us to operate and expand that realm of influence where we're utilizing different ways of doing things and diversifying our economies as we do it.
That's great. Okay, so step by step, that's what I'm gathering. That is great. And another question that came up is, were you present for the science camp with the youth? How did you kind of notice the youth taking on this technology? Did you think that they were adapting to it very quickly? We also have Sarah here on the panelist, so I'm going to call on her to speak on this right after you. But if you have any thoughts to share about the science camp and how that went.
Absolutely. And we actually covered a couple different technologies at the same time with the drones. And I believe that the showstopper was actually the drones. And the kids really attached themselves to it and waited in line to make sure that they were operating or getting the chance to operate the remotes. And yeah, Sarah, I'll hand it to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So first, thank you, Clifton, for the wonderful presentation. It was truly inspiring. You've demonstrated how drones can achieve so much more than just fly. They have the power to improve the quality of the life in countless ways, from protecting the environment to producing critical support in emergencies. In science camps, yeah, Nick and I had a good experience, and it was inspiring to witness how quickly the kids at the science camp grab the concept and become enthusiastic about drone. The creativity and curiosity were remarkable, and it was fantastic to see the perception of drone go from the simple gadget to powerful tools with the impactful real-world applications. One of the standout moment was when one of the kids, amazed by the size of the large drone, asked Nick if it could carry them. And yeah, that was, this kid was enthusiasm and imaginative thinking highlight the immense potential of the next generation to embrace technology and drive innovation in ways we can scarcely imagine.
I do love that, Sarah, because that's a precursor to the conversation we'll have in about 5 to 10 years for VTOLs, vertical takeoff and landing vehicles. So that's exciting to think about.
Yeah, I know it was interesting when we asked at the end, there was just drawing, and then they ask about the sessions that we have, and then when they can ask the questions, there was a gift card. You can just pass the gift card as a gift. And then when I ask about the VTOL, what is the VTOL, and then with the students, they know what is the VTOL, and it was yeah, what's it stand for.
Yeah, and we did have a little bit of a trouble with rain, so we didn't get out there the final time. So I know that the students will invite them back, and we plan on doing a follow-up, but we've had a lot of lessons learned. The first go around, we did learn a lot from our first experience. We need to engage the students on a more common ground. And yes, I was there both days, making sure that I delivered the opening speeches and the closing speeches, and working side by side, making sure I was there catching the comments from the teachers of the high school, as well as the instructors that came out from SAIT. That's how we have to work together, all hands on deck.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. I'm just looking at the Q&A, waiting for more questions to come in, but I know I have lots, so I don't want to take everyone's time, but feel free to ask in the chat box. Another interesting concept that I noticed in your talk was the decentralization of the energy grid, so putting on microgrids and things like that. That's a really interesting concept, and I think it lends its hand really well into self-reliance. And as like my background is in disaster emergency management, so I look and think a lot about, and I read a lot about empowering communities to be able to handle their own disasters without relying on, the federal or the provincial governments to come in and step in. Canada being as large of a nation that it is, it's spread out very thin when it comes to some of these resources and services. So this is, I think, a fantastic first step into holding on and building a stronger, resilient community. Are there any other examples that you can think of that come to mind about building resilience from, the ground up?
Absolutely. What we're doing in the housing and facilities management is basically making that envelope even higher. The bar on First Nations was, well, there was none. I'll just be perfectly honest. When building on First Nations, there was very little uh, onus on how do I say this in a really nice way? There was very little onus on seeing the compliance of code on First Nations when building. So we're trying to flip that whole story on its face. We're actually reaching out to do the development of cleaner codes and towards net zero initiatives. Our wraparound services building is actually incorporating not only solar panels, but we're seeing for the first time geothermal heating and cooling methodologies on the nation. And once that happens, we're going to make sure that that is the new standard and only raise the bar up further. So like you mentioned, it's a way to interact with a decentralization model. So you don't have to rely on the natural gas that we all operate under. It's cheap, it's effective, but it does not apply an autonomous structure. You depend on these retailers of natural resources when it's right below our feet. I think that realizing what Mother Earth can provide rather than extract, there's nothing being pulled out but heat. And that's a really great thing for our elders to see and our children to know that we're using every part of the animal, even if it's our environment.
Very well said. It's nice to see the full circle picture of connecting Indigenous knowledge to this technology that's coming forth today, and seeing how they work hand in hand. And it's not too far different from what we've been learning as kids, and just applying it to today's world and today's challenges. And there's tons of challenges, but we've got brains for innovative solutions. So it's great to see. It's fantastic. I'm just going to go through the chat box once more. Okay. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that we might have missed in this chat?
Well, I did fail to mention the fact that we are trying to utilize the hemp industry in another way, and that's for the development of composites. So utilizing the hemp characteristics in conjunction with polymers and making sure that we have a strength-based replacement for what's used for vehicle exterior sidings and apply those to the drone technologies. So we're not importing a whole bunch of supply chain things that might not make it to the actual end date. We're seeing globally the supply chain teeter on delivering all of these. We are working on innovation that can apply it to the batteries themselves. I can't speak anymore because NDA is a thing that we have to adhere to, but I think that yeah, you're going to see some great things from Frog Lake First Nations and our partners in the terms of providing capacity in developing composites, utilizing carbon black and hemp as its basis. Those are things that can be developed here in Alberta by First Nations. We just need partners that can see the viability and put aside their risk adversement and work with us.
Yeah, that's great. Definitely. Thank you for giving us that little teaser. I know you can't speak too much about it in detail, but I think you also had your email and contact information on that slide. So what I can do is put that in the chat if anyone wants to contact you directly. That's they're more than welcome. Stephanie's saying that she found the, sorry, did you want to say something?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, we just have a comment from Stephanie saying that she found the story of finding the missing boy using drones extremely touching. I also agree. She's asking, was it just imaging and video, or did thermal imaging play a role as well in locating missing child?
Luckily, we found them during the day, so it was just imaging.
Okay, yes, it's a very touching story. That's good to hear.
Yeah, it choked me up a bit rehashing it. I was only the guy in the seat at home, keeping up with Facebook and texts as they came in. I was actually ill at the time, so unable to go and join everyone out there. But I think everyone and their dog were out there at the same time. So it was just a beautiful thing. It was the child of my cousin, so my nephew, that we got to see at the school just recently with our parent-teacher interview that I rushed back from Edmonton to attend last night. So she teaches my son. That's how connected we are. She's a educator on our nation, and boy, did my community come out in droves to make sure that we help. And that's what it all, I think, belongs to right now. I think one of the things that I need to mention in closing, Michelle, if we're going to wrap this up, is that the work that we're doing right now is not only here in Canada, but in the United States. And of course, I mentioned the Asian markets, the opportunity to work with the Middle East, with the UK. But I think the real definition of what First Nations can do is not only provide their voice to the land stewardship and how we need to reclaim that if we're not already doing it, but to reestablish and reinvigorate pre-colonial trade routes. Now, colonization harmed all of the Indigenous nations on their development processes. Acknowledged. Let's move forward. And by doing so, we have to acknowledge our history, our ancestors that created those connections, the loss in present day, and then see the future for what it is, a reestablishment of connections, relationship, entrepreneurial, and education-based. So that's what we need to do. Together, I think we have an opportunity to not just reconcile our differences and our grievances, but to really create action and live that quality life we all talk about. Thanks so much for giving me this opportunity, Michelle. And I do extend anyone the opportunity to come and talk. Frog Lake First Nations is willing. And so doors are open, and we're about to create some major waves. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for that. I'll make sure to throw your email in the chat, and I do see some people hoping to catch you with ideas. So that's great to hear. And I totally agree with what you're saying about the acknowledgements and the reconciliation. They've done their part, and now it's time for action. So thank you for your final words, and I'll leave it up to Francesco for the closing. Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Clifton, for that presentation. That was fantastic. It's great to see all the work that you're doing with the community and with the surrounding communities. And great to see the kind of like real world impacts that the technology is having on the community. And thank you, Michelle, as well, for moderating today's session and for helping us put together the whole series and this session. Thank you to everyone at SAIT as well for all of their support. And of course, thank you to our audience for being here today and for joining us. Just a reminder that this session is being recorded, so if you would like to revisit the session or revisit any of what Clifton talked about today, please feel free to catch this video on our YouTube channel and share it within your networks to anyone else who might be interested that couldn't attend today. Michelle has just put Clifton's email in the chat, so for anyone who's looking to reach out to him and connect, please also just take note of the email there in the chat. And yeah, and as mentioned, this is a monthly speaker series taking place the third Thursday of every month. So please mark that down on your calendars that our next session will be on December 18th. So registration again is always open and free for this series. So please also share that within your networks to anyone who might want to tune in. And with that, just one last big thank you to everybody for being here today. It was a fantastic session, and yeah, I'm really glad that you were able to join us today, Clifton. That was great.
Thanks to the both of you. I hope I can do this in the near future, or give me some rest, and I'll do it when I can. Thanks so much.
Sounds
Thank you
good.
very
Thank you.
much.